All right, welcome to Act Now. Julianna Forlano here. I've got the headlines enviro issue in celebration of Earth Day. First, the entire state of California ran its power grid, 97% of its power grid, on renewable energy for a short time this month, which proves that it can be done. The state was able to do this thanks to an uptick in solar and wind production. They're aiming at net zero carbon emissions by 2045. Too late to avoid some serious environmental tipping points, but hey, it's better than the alternative. Guess what? If we had started earlier, we would be able to go to green energy right now. So you got to start sometime. Anyway, California has at least, by the way, 25 bills in their state legislature that deal positively with climate change. And as the state with an economy that, if it were its own country, would rank as the 5th largest economy on the planet, ahead of the UK, ahead of India, just a tiny bit behind Germany. The work that they're doing over there is not small potatoes. Exciting to, right? This is good. You see an environmental rundown and you think it's going to be a disaster, and a lot of disaster stories make the news, but there is also a fight going on. There are people pushing back. There are positive things happening. And now on to another one of those. In my second story, not long ago, CNBC reported that the top global chip manufacturers were among the major companies that produce tons of carbon emissions, and I mean tons. Intel is taking that more seriously than most, moving $300 million into a renewable energy effort, cutting carbon emissions to zero by 2040. Again, those numbers, 2040. By then, our kids will be living in an undersea version of the Hunger Games, but hey, it was worth a report. Hopefully they can do it faster. We'll see what happens. Our next story, I mentioned at the top of the show, President Biden has decided to bring back oil and gas drilling on federal land. You probably heard about this recently. He's been pushed by Republicans who blame him, of course, for the increase in gas prices. He has basically reversed his pretty unequivocal promise that he made on the campaign, saying no new drilling on federal land, which, by the way, Trump and his MAGA men were and will, if another one of them gets elected, they were going to open up the whole universe to anyone with a pump. It's very rapey, very on brand. I just like to report on what the other, certain guy, when we're about to bust on Biden, I also like to remind everyone anyway, what the alternative was, what they were doing. Anyway, let's look at this clearly, and then we're going to bust on Biden's the action that he hasn't taken, that he could, that he should. The land Biden offered for auction, by the way, is 80% less than the 733,000 acres that were originally nominated to go up for auction. So it's like the harm reduction model of drilling, I guess. It's also said that the lease sales are going to be subject to tribal consultation and community input, which hopefully those consultations and communities will say, we don't want this. Biden is also increasing royalties that companies have to pay for drilling from what was 12.5% to a whopping 18.75%, which is not enough. Anyway, it is the first of its kind increase in more than 100 years, but environmentalists are obviously concerned, to put it mildly, that this will lead us farther from our goals. The goal of not destroying the planet and leaving a livable one to the next generation and to ourselves. Again, Biden makes the argument that he must do something to bring down the gas prices, and so does everyone else in a lockstep of propaganda. In a fossil fuel industry friendly BS wash, ABC News political director went on a rant, Rick Klein did, on Good Morning America, saying that this Biden White House is under enormous pressure to do something about the spiraling costs of gasoline. Well, you're putting enormous pressure on him just by saying that. Anyway, he went on to say it might mean more exploration and might mean more production, but it's going to take a while, blah, blah, blah. But I have a great idea on how Biden can bring down the cost of gasoline without bringing up the supply. How about we just cap corporate profit at, say, maybe 12%. 10% is a loss leader. Let's give them a little more than that, over and above the cost of making the stuff that takes it out of the land, so they can't complain about that. And we could use the rest of those profits to bring down the cost of gas at the pump. How about that? Since the gas and oil is drawn off the land and that we live on, I believe someone once said, this land is your land, this land is my land. So how about we use the profits for the betterment of everyone? Or is that a step too far in the direction of the common good for people? Anyway, if it is, we could just bring the oil and gas corporation taxes back to the rate they were only 4 years ago and use that largesse to bring down the prices at the pump. What do you think? Exxon, only one corporation involved. Exxon's annual income taxes for 2020 were negative 5.632. That's a lot. $1 billion. That was a 200% or more decrease in owed funds from the year before. And then Exxon's annual income taxes from that year, which is 2019, were a 44% decline from 2018. Thank you, Trump tax cuts. So can't we just blame some of this money at the pump on capitalism, corporate greed, right-wing tax policy? Now, don't get me started on how we should just insist on energy efficiency, and perhaps if the supply was actually bottlenecked, it would create a free market incentive to invest ASAP in green energy, which, as we just saw about the California being able to run on green, almost 100% green energy and windmills and whatnot. That's a great workable idea. Okay. Of course, protections for the underprivileged need to be in place so they don't bear the brunt and the burden of this change. But seriously, does Yogurt World have to have its lights on all friggin' night? That's what I want to know. Can't they get a solar panel to light the Yogurt World thing? Things that aren't important. Do they need to be lit up? Could we just consume slightly less, America? We could have less light pollution. We could have nice things if we were willing. We could. Many of us are willing. So let's push those levers of power. Next story. Is it possible that crashing economies could be actually good for the environment? The New York fearmonger just put out a piece about how the world economy has entered a period of what they call intense uncertainty. I love the way they talk about that. In the title and in the emotionally laden picture, they blame this intense uncertainty on the war in Ukraine. And later on down the article, they mention pandemic fallout as the culprit. But nowhere do they mention corporate price gouging, pandemic profiteering, and other unseemly capitalist atrocities that are happening now. But again, it is the New York Times. Anyone who uses their eyeballs knows the earth can't sustain this level of extraction and consumption necessary to qualify as an economic growth process under our current system. Is it possible that a slowdown in economic growth could be good for the environment upon which we depend for life? Who better to answer this question than economist and regular guest here on the show, Professor Richard Wolff, who said, yeah, it could be. And then he went on to talk about a bunch of other interesting things. Here is a clip from my brief chat with him. We have an Earth Day is coming up. We have an environmental crisis on our hands. And this idea that constant growth, I just don't think it's sustainable. The experts tell us the amount of consumption that we have is not sustainable. And we're already, if you look outside, you're going to see odd weather and odd things happening in the environment, no matter where you are. So in addition to just the financial and the reorganization of our world and our political systems, in addition to that financial and political reorganization, I think there's that added pressure of climate change and, economic collapse that wasn't on the table right after World War II. First, how do you see that playing into the reorganization? And then aren't potentially it's not potentially good news that we can't keep up with demand if demand isn't so high anymore, because isn't that potentially good news for the environment?
Yeah, it could be. It could be if the lesson being learned were, well, here's an opportunity for other reasons to do what we should have been doing for ecological reasons. Okay, now we have these other things, but we could use this opportunity to go in the direction of a greening of our environment and of our relationship to the environment. But I don't mean to rain on your parade. What is possible depends on the political decisions that are being made to deal with these situations. And those are not in the direction of sustainability at all.
Yeah.
We're seeing governments around the world, including the United States, so upset about dealing with Russia that, okay, we can't have oil and gas from Russia, so we'll go look for more oil and gas somewhere else in the ocean. And Biden and others are opening up areas that had been withdrawn from that kind of pollution activity and opening them up again. So we're not only not going in the right direction, we're going in the wrong direction.
Look, I mean, what could he have done that America would have even accepted? Would he say, listen, you're going to have to turn the lights off from 5 to 9, you're all going to have to take the rail system that we didn't build. We're going to have to take time to transition to this green energy economy, and everyone is actually going to have to feel it. When we live here in America, where a shared sacrifice is not something people want to make, even if it's like, could you wear a piece of paper across your face while you're in an airplane so the woman in 32B doesn't die next week? Right. It's this idea of shared sacrifice in America is just not, it's not welcome. It's not even on the table. I don't know your thoughts about that.
No, I think let me play with your example. I think it's a very good one. It tells you exactly what's going on. Every president excuses himself by saying, "Oh, it'd be nice to do these things, but we would have had to start 5 years ago." Okay, Jack, you didn't do it 5 years ago. Why don't you start so that the next turkey who becomes president can't say, like you just did, "I'm not doing it because somebody else didn't do it." And let me use the example of the automobile because it tells you really everything. The automobile is the single most important source of air pollution in our economic system. That stuff that comes out of the exhaust of your car is really bad. And it's been bad for a long time. For a while, we decided to require a device to be put in the car that would limit the exhaust. Our big corporate leaders, GM, Ford, Volkswagen, Fiat, all of them, violated the law by putting in fake devices. They got caught after years and years, during which we all got emphysema, lung disease, and cancer and everything else because they were making money by violating the intent and the letter of the law. The solution, because remember, the automobile, not only the worst polluter, automobiles kill more people and injure more people than our wars do. They are a horrible institution. And there's an easy solution. The vast majority of Americans live in or near cities, 80% of us. All right, the solution is mass public rail transportation, street railway. Boston has had it for decades, for a century by now. Other countries, no trick. Easy to do, easy to produce. Let's give a lot of people a job, build a proper public transportation system. It's cheaper. It uses way less fuel of any kind. It doesn't pollute, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't kill people. It doesn't injure people. It's just, we don't do it. You know what we're doing? We just made the richest man in the world the man who, instead of doing the rational, developed a way to have individual cars run off electricity. I mean, The lunacy of it is what you have to appreciate. Not only that we're doing that, which is crazy, but that we're rewarding this man. He becomes he just about, what is he doing now? Buying Twitter,
Trying to buy
etc.,
Twitter.
etc. We're rewarding a man who should have been shaken by the shoulders and said, "Silly man, that's not what we need." Another private car for all of us to stick in the garage and to stick on the front of the street, wasting all of those resources. I mean, it's beyond word. It is beyond word. But these are political decisions. We could have a greening of America built around mass, quality, public transportation. I'm not talking about what we're used to. I'm talking about a train every 3 minutes, a street railway every 2 minutes, comfortable, well appointed, safe, enjoyable, aesthetically designed. People go from all over the world to go on those cable cars in San Francisco. Do something like that everywhere. It'll be enjoyable. It'll make the city a more livable place, on and on and on. We don't do that. We put profit first. I'm a critic of capitalism because in the end, it's this kind of system that makes profit the logic, the goal, the driver of what happens. That's our problem. I don't want to blame this or that person. The people caught up in this, like me, were brought up in this culture, were educated in this culture, and so they're doing what the culture tells them to do. But if it's crazy, well, then, it's time for us to say, stop all of this. And the only real tragedy will be if we not only don't stop it, but we keep bumping our heads and eventually our nuclear weapons against one another. And then the whole thing is over. And the absurdity of it all, it's overwhelming.
Your point about the public transportation makes me think about Disney World, actually, because I was just there, and boy, do their buses run on time. And there's one every 5 minutes to get you from Hotel X to Magic Kingdom Z. And, there's no waiting. It's all air conditioned and it's clean. So if Disneyland can do it, Disney World can do it, then I think the United States of America could get itself together to do something like that. Am I right? I've got more on Disneyland coming up in another show that was after my trip. There was just too much to tell you. Anyway, we've got a chat board lighting up here, which I'm happy to see. A lot of good comments there. Just so many. I loved this. Here's that one that I'm loving here. Army of All says that capitalism plus renewables actually equals useless as perpetual growth collapses planetary ecology to get the resources for that green perpetual growth economy in complete defiance of immutable physics of a finite world. Very true. The disease of more is going to kill us all. And we've got other comments here. The Green parties were against NATO, actually, for implementing nuclear non-proliferation, against the arms industry, for grid modernization, for public health, against pipelines for only 40 years. That's from CRHU Crew. Is that how I pronounce it? I'm not sure. Anyway, I do appreciate everyone in here giving me the stuff. Crew also says total economic collapse of the U.S., Australia, Canada, and other high-consuming waster countries could actually help with the environment. We shall see. All right.